Sometimes majoring in studio art is fun because sometimes you get to make a sculpture piece exploring your brain's relationship with its hyperfixations. Sometimes one of those hyperfixations is an anthropomorphic sunflower who likes to garden and adopt clearly non plant creatures and care for them via watering and burying them. Anyways, we're making another doll. Or rather, I did. June of 2024, I was here. I mean, technically all these projects I post you see after they're completed, except this one I completed almost a whole year ago back in like fall semester, because the last 2 semesters were way too busy and I got way too mental to edit all the footage from this video and another I may or may not put out. A majority of this footage was recorded in September of last year, except for some of the photo shoot pics later, so oops. I hope you enjoy this custom anyway. Back to 2023. I've been wanting to do another custom for a while now, though hadn't really had the time with all my coursework in school. But because I'm me, I managed to incorporate a doll project into one of my art classes, my introductory sculpture class actually. I even have a victim already. This doll's going for a ride. It's going to be a ride for me too. I've done a bit of body modding before with Anais, but that was only to unhigh heel her feet. This is a whole different game, because this time we are elongating a doll. Today, we're anthropomorphizing a sunflower, so of course it needs to be tall. I cut up some wires to stick within the pieces of this doll and act as an armature, and anchor them in with hot glue. I bend them to the height that I think is appropriate, then I stabilize the wires with even more hot glue. I coat the wires inside an epoxy sculpt. After it cures, I sand the epoxy down and make it smooth with the rest of the body. Now I shift to the feet. First, I cut a lot of little embroidery floss pieces and tie them off at the end. Then I sculpt some stumps for the feet. Once I get it into a shape that I like, I use a pin to make some holes, which I shoved the knotted ends of the embroidery floss into before squeezing it closed or otherwise covering the hole up with clumps of epoxy meant to look like dirt. After running out and then ordering more epoxy, I did the same thing to the other leg. When I was initially figuring out the armature and sculpting around that, I think I messed up somewhere with the feet and like the height discrepancy between the legs, but here, like working on the feet, I was able to even that out some. Plus, now with the doll being so bottom heavy and flat footed, she can stand on her own. Aside from sanding some towards the top of the feet mounds for a smoother transition, I keep the feet nice and rough, only taking some fine-grained sandpaper to buffer out my fingerprints. Finally, now we use a layer of Mr. Super Clear as a primer and do some painting. The primer honestly isn't super needed with how much I sanded the body, but I like to be thorough. I picked up this spring green color of acrylic from my local Walmart. It's ever so slightly less saturated than the original body color, but I guess it acts as a sort of natural variation on the skin tone, and I think I blended it well enough into the upper body. I also painted the green roots with a base coat of burnt umber. I blended the two colors together with some forest green on the lower legs. I did end up making this color sort of an accent all around the body. I played around with the forest green and the umber a little bit and ended up with a dash of umber on the hands as I felt this flower probably wouldn't be afraid to get its hands dirty. I did try to add some tonal variation by making a couple color mixes with some Tuscan red and white gesso. The gesso was both to make things lighter and I hoped it would give the feet some grainy texture, but it wasn't really noticeable. I still like how it looks though. Finally, the doll gets his head back. Just to be beheaded again. The neck peg looks like it's going to get in the way some too, so let's just snip that off real quick. Ah, the beauty of creation. I bought a thing of fake sunflowers from Walmart, though if you're also making a flower-headed doll, you could probably use whatever flower you want. Each of these flowers was a bit sparse on petals, so luckily you could just disassemble these guys. I take a lot of petal pieces from other flowers and stack them all up onto the post of one flower. Using the remains of the neck peg to help me center it, I hot glue this flower onto our little head stump. I cut a little notch in the stem so that it would sit on the center of the neck peg. It looks amazing from the front, but from the back it's kinda rough. It's time to do what I've been doing this entire project and add epoxy sculpt to this body part and hope that fixes the problem. According to the internet, epoxy sticks to vinyl, so let's put trust in the great minds of the internet, which for once worked out. I'd paint this, but that's going to be rather useless considering the next steps that I have in mind. Instead, I'm going to sand it a bit with some 80 grain sandpaper to give this hardened blob some tooth. I take some leaves from the Walmart plastic sunflower and cut them down into thinner leaf-like shapes. They're honestly just pointed ovals, but the aesthetic still stands. I start with some smaller sized ones to glue on the back of the head, layering them so that neither glue nor epoxy shows. Once I get down to the neck, I work my way up to larger leaves, which cover the neck and base of the head. I also positioned them to go in between the doll's shoulder blades because why not? I figured it would be a cool little visual thing. But it gets kind of covered up by the clothes, but it's fine. I've been learning how to crochet, and lately I've been crocheting while in my classes as it helps me listen better and keeps me from fidgeting. I've wanted to experiment with crochet doll clothes before, and ended up putting this together while in class one day. I'd like to make a tutorial on how to make this sweater, though definitely feel like I should polish up the design and, practice crocheting some more first. I picked up this cute fake denim at an antique mall. Someone was selling a bag of partial fabric squares, and I eagerly bought it. It's only cotton, so it's not as thick as actual denim, but that makes it perfect for this project. I drafted up this pattern, which is pretty much just a circle skirt with an added panel on top. I forgot to record the actual sewing, but I still think it came out pretty good. I used some brown thread to attach everything together and sewed it all by hand to give it more of that jean aesthetic. The pattern is a little rough around the edges, but once it's also a bit more polished, I might redo this and make a tutorial. I don't know. As a final thing, I go back to our little flowers root ball feet and start untangling the embroidery floss as a way to make them more organic and rooty. And with that, we can finally incorporate this doll into the rest of my project for my sculpture class. Now, let me introduce you to Sunny. I had the concept in my head for a while of an anthropomorphic plant person for, well, a long while actually. The idea got sparked by some cool art of a girl with a rose forehead that I found on Reddit a few years back. I really enjoyed the concept because we're taking a character otherwise so soft and cheerful, and also something else soft and cheerful, flowers, and mashing it together in just the way that makes it a bit eerie for added flavor. That's pretty much what Sunny's entire character is. I'd like to think that one of my dolls from a previous video, Iris, met Sunny on their travels and the two became good friends over time. While I don't really have much of a definitive story for Sunny, I did have this idea that she found and took in a baby at some point. Except she doesn't really know how to care for tiny humans and keeps asking Iris for advice. Iris, not being that grown up themselves, still has to routinely tell her that she shouldn't put a child in a flower pot because that's not how humans grow. I figured that before you head out, I should also show you this doll in the scene that she was built to be in for my sculpture class. Sunny's hanging out in a city of toys and ideas that inadvertently destroyed the area that they called home. This whole big scene diorama thing was supposed to be an allegory on the perils of making art as a coping mechanism and the stress that it can paradoxically cause, but that's another rant for another video. I appreciate y'all joining me on the journey of making this funky little sunflower, and I hope that you enjoy how much she came out as much as I do. I don't post often nowadays just because school has been that busy, and I keep thinking it's going to settle down, but then it doesn't. This is just my life now, I guess. But if you'd like to tune in for my next project, whether doll related, Furby related, literally just some random art I post on Instagram, um, or something else entirely, feel free to subscribe here or follow me on my Instagram account, which is in the description below. I hope you have a lovely day, and thanks for watching. Bye!